Hi guys, Buckley here, doing a crash course on this software program I'm asking you to use called Algodoo. Algodoo is a physics simulation software package. It's a two-dimensional physics simulation software package that can show interactions between solid objects. It also has a physics or a fluid simulator, which we're not going to really go into in this crash course. If I see a lot of people doing projects with fluids for their project one, I'll show you a couple things on that. But for the most part, we're going to deal with solid objects, okay? So Algodoo works in two dimensions. So when you first open it up, you're asked to create a scene, okay? And this is what it looks like when you create a scene. You can, and all these are like backgrounds, right? So I picked the chalkboard scene here. So this is a 2D space, two-dimensional space, X and Y. And you create objects in that space and then allow them to interact. So this is kind of air up here, or chalkboard, and then this is the ground. This gray down here in this particular scene is the ground. So I'm going to start by doing a fairly simple example, and this is just an example of a little ball that we're going to drop. Okay, so I'm going to come and I'm going to draw a circle for a ball, and let's say I want to make that circle a particular size. I can come and click the rescale tool and kind of change my geometry for this, right? I can go to exactly maybe 1x. Okay, there we go. All right, well, that's the original size. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make this ball, I'm going to change its material. So right now it's a default material with some default properties. I'm going to change it to rubber. And to get to this menu, I just double clicked on the object. Some mice you're going to want to right click, okay? But you got a lot of options here. Material, you got some information on what layer. So sometimes if you're making more complex systems, you want to draw certain things on certain layers and turn those layers on and off to make it easier. You can also control where this object sits. So does it sit in front of another object or behind it so you don't have collisions? And then you can do geometric operations, combining shapes and this sort of thing. So here we are with our ball. Our ball is sitting up in the air right now, okay? And I can use these tools. This tool here allows me to move an object. It allows me to move an object whether or not I'm playing my simulation or not. This here is a rotation tool. Okay, so I can rotate my object, and my ball isn't a true ball. I'm going to redo the ball, guys, because I think I change the shape. So here I am, here's my ball, and I'm just going to leave it that size. Okay. Double click, again, change the material to a rubber. Okay, so Algodoo allows you to simulate a couple things. So it can simulate gravity, that's this red apple here, for Sir Isaac Newton, and I can turn gravity on or off, right? So if gravity is off, this thing is just going to stay in the background. If gravity's on, it's going to want to fall to the floor. This here is air friction. I'm going to turn air friction off and just leave gravity on. That's probably a fairly good mode for most of your simulations, okay? So again, if gravity's off and I hit play, nothing interesting happens. With gravity on, the ball is going to drop to the floor, and then it's going to bounce, right? Just like you'd expect out of a rubber ball. Okay, and I can come in, and with the simulation on, notice that it's still playing. I can move this object around, right? So I can move it and toss it back down. That's the force tool. So the force tool actually applies a force to the object, right? So I'm kind of like tapping the ball with my finger right now. The move tool actually just picks up the object and moves it in space. And again, this tool is going to work whether your simulation is running or not. Okay, so that's a real simple simulation. Let's say that I'm happy with it. I want to share it with somebody, or I want to work on it later. Make sure that you save it. Okay, so Algodoo doesn't allow you to open multiple scenes at once, at least as far as I've seen. So you want to make sure that you save a scene fairly regularly, and don't just move to another window because you'll lose your work. Okay, so this is a simple ball drop, and I'll just write a little description. Rubber ball dropped from height. That's it. Okay, and I can just change where I want to save it. There we go. Okay. There is an option to load scenes, so you can load previously created scenes that you've made, or you can load scenes that other folks have made. Please be aware that we do know that there's a repository for Algodoo scenes out there, and we want you to do your own work. So if we see something that looks suspicious, looks like maybe you plagiarized, that's going to be a major problem. So make sure that you do your own work. All right, so that's a simple ball drop exercise, right? Let's now do, let's do some gears, okay? So I'm going to create a new scene, and remember, when I create this new scene, the ball drop scene goes away, okay? So that's why it was important to save that. So I'm going to create some gears. I've got a gear tool here, okay? And let's say I'm going to create a gear with 9 teeth to it. Notice that this gear tool allows me to specify the teeth size. For gears to work, they need to have the same teeth size. So make sure that any gears that you're using in a gear train have the same teeth size. So I'm going to set my teeth size at 0.5 meters. Those are big teeth. And I'm going to then add another gear, okay? But before I do that, actually, let me show you what's up with this gear here. So I can rotate the gear, right? The gear is pinned to the background, and there's nothing on it right now to really, even though gravity is on, right? There's nothing on it to drive it, okay? So, so this gear is just going to stay in place, pinned to the background. All right, I'm adding another gear now, okay, and I'm going to make this a 18-tooth gear, right? So that gear ratio is 2 if this is the driver, and 1/2 if this is the driver, right? So here I am with this gear. Now I need them to mate, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move them together. And in order to get a perfect match, you kind of want to, when you're mating them, that in just a smidgen more. Okay. All right, so let me test out whether these gears work before I add something to drive it. And they don't. Actually, that's just moving it without contacting, so we're good. Okay, so let me hit play, and then I'm going to try to drive this gear with the other one, and it's kind of skipping past. Actually, the rotation tool doesn't work so well to test out gears. I'm going to show you how I normally test out gears. I would test it out by adding a motor here. So if I double click on the gear and I go to axles and I add a motor, this allows me to have a motor driving this guy, right? So this is now my input gear and this is my output. So if I hit play, you can see that this motor is now driving this guy, okay? And I can control things about this motor. So if I double click, I can up the speed, right? So there we are, going faster and faster. And I can actually up the torque too. So if I wanted to drive something off of this guy, I could add that. All right, so that's gears. Sometimes you want to add a chain around the gears, and the chain tool doesn't work super well, but it's right here. So if you wanted to create a sprocket, right, that instead of having gears, you'd have a sprocket, you would separate these guys. There they are, they're separated. I'm going to click on the chain tool, and this chain tool also does rope. Okay, obviously rope's not going to work for winding around this, but chain, if I have a link distance slightly bigger than these teeth, and what I do is I actually wind up clicking across. Okay, so it needs to, whoops, I've already screwed it up. Delete. Okay, so I'm going to wind up coming around, right? See how the links are kind of snapping? I'm going to add a little bit of slack. Notice how I have a little slack in that. I want to make sure I connect the loop. I don't know if I connected it. I don't think I connected it. Woo! All right, so our chain right now is not super happy. There is a way to edit chains and do this kind of thing. I think that's sort of beyond. I'm going to do that in a more advanced tutorial. Also after I get a little better at making chains and sprockets. All right, but that's the gist of it. Okay, so right now this is not a happy simulation. But you can, let me see if I can break the chain. It's kind of fun. If I up the torque, it's going to do whatever it wants. Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave it there. with a, let me write a note here. So this is gears and gear, simple gear train with GR equals 2, or a poorly functioning sprocket and chain. All right, so that's gears and a half-done simulation on sprockets. Let's now do like a lever. Okay, so let's see about doing another type of simple machine. All right, so I'm going to make a lever, and I'm going to do this with just going to create a plank. So here's a plank, and if I want, I'm going to even make this out of wood. That would be a good thing to make a plank out of, right? Okay, and I'm going to move this plank fairly close to the ground. I'm going to add an axle to it. And let me put my axle here. Okay, and I'm going to put an object. I'm going to put like a stone or something down here. Okay, so let me make this stone. I'm going to make it super dense stone. I'm just going to up the mass. It's going to be 100 kg. It's really dense. It's like marble. Okay, and I'm also going to up the friction. I'm going to make it super sticky to that surface. And that's just to make my simulation a little easier. All right, and I'm going to lower all of this a little bit closer to the ground. Okay, so if I hit play here, right, what's going to happen is this stone's going to contact the plank and it should cause it to tilt, right? Boom. My coefficient of friction is not perfect because those things still aren't sticking to each other. Okay. So if I add a force to this end, I should be able to pry up that stone, right? Pry up that super heavy stone. There we go. So this would be an example of a lever, right? Now, let me see if I can make this run a little bit smoother, right? So I'm going to move this guy. I'm going to make him a little bit longer even. It's kind of a funky shape, but I'm just going to make it longer to see if that doesn't help it with. Oh, chill out. So right now it's looking like this stone is sitting in front of the wood, but behind the axle, so it's not really contacting the wood. See how it's falling through? So let me see if I can't move that to the front. So I've got my layers wrong at this point. So these things need to be on the same page if they're going to collide. There we go. Okay, that collides. All right. This Algodoo simulation has come undone, but I think you get the idea, right, of where we're going with this. So I do have a lever. It's got a mechanical advantage greater than 1. I'm lifting a very, very heavy stone by putting a small force at the end, right? Okay, So with that, that's the end of the crash course. As I work on different things, I will post tips. If you guys have any questions or anything you'd like to figure out as a class, send me an email and I will either try to solve it myself, or if somebody's beat me to the punch, I'll post their work. Okay, so we're working on this together, learning Algodoo together, and exploring. All right, but that should be enough to get you started. All right, guys. Good luck with the simulations. Remember that there's office hours from 1 to 3 on Sunday. I'll be there down in the eCalc in 010 Spencer to do more